It is without question that Chase is one of the best credit card issuers on the planet, at least for people trying to get into points and miles. And Chase cards are a prime choice for people in this space. But unfortunately, Chase fairly recently has significantly changed the way it improves customers. And it's not great. Today we're going to talk about it. My name is Sean, and I'm here with my co-host.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sherwin, the other half of the Credit Card BS podcast. Today's topic is Chase's recent changes to their approval algorithms. And these are based on data points and anecdotes and personal experience that we've seen. And we're going to share that with you today and what it means for our strategy going forward. Now, for the longest time, there are really only two main rules or guidelines you had to worry about in terms of getting approved for Chase cards. So the first one is the 524 rule, which, to be very clear, still applies. Sean, can we get a quick refresher of the 524 rule?
Yeah, if you have 5 or more credit card accounts that you're the primary account holder for, showing up on your credit report in the past 24 months, you automatically be denied for basically every Chase card. Authorized user accounts also pretty much disqualify you, but you can call Chase and maybe convince them that it shouldn't. But yeah, that's basically how the rule works.
Yes, and the 524 count includes cards that you've opened in the last 24 months, even if you've closed them subsequently. So keep that in mind. And generally, business cards do not report to your personal credit report, including Chase business cards. So you only count the personal cards, but you need to be under 524 to get approved for Chase business cards as well. So that's one rule, the 524 rule. The other, this is more of a guideline than the rule, is to consider your total credit line across all Chase cards. Now, mostly in the past, if you already have a lot of Chase credit cards, they sometimes won't approve you for a new card, not because they don't want to give you that new product, but because they've already given out a lot of credit line and would view it as a great risk if they gave you even more credit limit. And since our goal of points and miles is not to necessarily get more credit limit, but to get a new product and its benefits and its bonus. One strategy we've been able to use is by reducing credit from existing accounts. You can call in or a secure message to do that. Or sometimes during reconsideration, you can offer to move credit from an existing account over to the new account that they will allow you to open, but they just can't give you any more credit. So does that make sense, Sean?
Yeah, totally agree with you there. I mean, you're really, the credit line thing really was not a huge issue for a lot of people in this game, as you said, because, we could just move it around, downgrade, lower the credit line, etc.
Yeah. And generally, the guideline was about 50% of your income is sort of the top line of how much credit they're willing to extend to you. And as a result of us knowing these two rules, you could potentially get a bunch of Chase Business Inc. cards. And there are several reasons you could do this. One big one was that their bonuses were enormous and they came with very good referral bonuses. So if you were in a 2-player system, you could just rack up a ton of points by opening Inc. Unlimiteds, Inc. Cashes, and Inc. Prefers. And those points are ultimate rewards points that can be transferred to the transfer partner. So super valuable thing. And because the business cards don't add to your 524 status, as long as you stay at 424 or under, you could keep getting those Inc. business cards indefinitely. Also, unlike a lot of the personal cards, the Inc. cards don't have 24 or 48-month language. What does that mean, Sean?
Yeah, so what that means is you can just keep getting bonuses even on the same card that you already hold. Whereas let's say I open a personal Sapphire and, then I reach the bonus or whatever, I'm, restricted from getting that bonus again on a Sapphire card for 48 months. And on the other personal cards, it's usually 24 months. But the Inc. cards had no such restriction. So I could open an Inc. Cash, let's say, and then 2 months later open another Inc. Cash using the same SSN, same information. I didn't need an EIN or anything like that. And yeah, the bonus would post. And these Inc. cards were especially good because the referral offers on them were pretty significant. For a while, they were offering 40,000 points per Inc. referral. So let's say your player 2 has an Inc. and I have an Inc. Great, I refer my player 2 to another Inc. let's say that's, on the high offer, it was 90,000 points. They get a 90,000 point ink bonus, and I get a 40,000 point referral bonus. That's 130,000 points net with a no annual fee card that only required like $6,000 in spending within 3 months. So you were really able to just rake in the points. I mean, on the Chase side, this is, basically the highest offers you could ever get, and just rake them in consistently back to back. People are, were doing this every couple of months. I had, both, I had my girlfriend getting like ink cards all the time. I'm above 524, but, she wasn't. So she was getting ink cards every few months. So really it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do with all these Chase points? But, now it's gotten significantly tougher to do that. So should we talk about, kind of the new restrictions they've put in place?
Sure. So we have seen that Chase has been tightening the approval criteria. So these aren't necessarily hard rules, but these are just very noticeable patterns we've seen. So, especially on ink cards, we've seen many reports of rejections with no possibility of reconsideration. If you already have several inks, they now view the situation of you having a lot of inks and not really putting spend on them as a negative factor toward whether they'll approve you for yet another ink, which kind of makes sense because if you're not really using the credit that they're giving you, they're kind of like, why are you coming to ask us for even more credit for new accounts? Obviously, the answer is for the sign up bonus, but I guess it's not as profitable for them to keep doing that. So be careful if you have a lot of ink cards. And I want to talk a bit about some data that was collected on a Reddit survey. So, this is just survey someone ran online, and the sample size is not huge, and obviously sample may not be super representative, so take it with a grain of salt. But we've seen yeah, Sean, do you want to run through some of the interesting patterns about the changes in ink approvals?
Yes. So now this data, of course, before I say it, is, obviously this isn't perfect data. I don't know what other factors are necessarily behind these approvals. But so the data is that people that had 0 ink cards, and there's 14 data points on this, when applying for their first ink card, had an 87% chance of approval. Those with 1 ink card had a 68% chance of approval. Those with 2 ink cards had a 57% chance of approval. Those with 3 ink cards had an 18% chance of approval, and those with 4 ink cards had a 0% chance of approval. Now, especially for that last one, it's only 14 data points, so we can't say for sure that if you have 4 ink cards, you can't get another one. But, there's definitely a very, very clear trend that the more ink cards you have, especially beyond 2 cards, you significantly decrease your chance of being approved for an ink card. And before, we don't have the data on what it was like before, but it didn't feel that way necessarily. As long as you were waiting, the expected period of time between applications, so 3 to 6 months on the high end, right? You usually were totally fine. Now it just seems to be you could have a great profile, you could have low velocity, you could have waited a while between your last ink card, but when if you already have 3 or something or 4 and you're going for another one, it's not looking good. And this is unfortunate because this was one of the best strategies, pretty much my go-to strategy for earning points that I'd recommend basically to everyone that was like into this game, because it's like, look, it's simple. You're earning a lot of practically usable points, right? These aren't Amex points, so it's like really easy to use these because you can transfer to Hyatt. No annual fee effectively, right? Because you're just opening, usually opening the unlimited to the cash. Nice referral bonuses, right? And it wasn't really showing up on your profile much because there's no, velocity, because you're just getting the inquiry, not the actual card on your report. So yeah, this was like a really good strategy, and now it's a lot tougher. Now, Sherwin, is there any data that we have in terms of what might positively or negatively affect your approval chances beyond just the number of ink cards you have?
Sure. I will say that one thing a lot of people previously suggested to do was to close your ink cards that you weren't using if they were at least 1 year old, and that would increase your chance of approval. Now we're seeing more and more that that's not necessarily the case, and the The survey data actually surprisingly showed that preemptively lowering credit limit had a negative effect on approvals. I'm most surprised by this finding because previously the evidence showed that if you lowered your credit limit, they're more likely to extend new credit to you. But so clearly something is changing behind the scenes. Another thing I've seen happen is uh, it used to be like when they one of the questions on application is like your annual business revenue or your annual business spend. And for the longest time, we have not seen that as a really significant factor in approvals. But I have now seen like your expected business spend is too low as one of the factors cited for denial. So that's to keep in mind. Um, Yeah, the data also shows having an open Chase business deposit account had a mild positive effect on approvals. Um, and floating large balances on your Chase cards had a negative effect on approvals. Additionally, this is anecdotal to my experience, not from this Reddit data. I'd say having large balances in Chase checking and savings accounts has shown to help with approvals. So something to keep in mind and something you might be able to plan for if you know you have an application for Chase coming up. Sean, anything else to add before I talk about what this means for personal cards as well?
No, I think you covered it really well.
Cool. So, I've been talking about a bunch about ink cards because that's like the card that people like to apply a lot for. But we've also seen this affect personal cards too. Reconsideration is now much tougher. I would say previously, if you're under 524, and you're able to lower your credit line or whatever, you generally be able to get through or at least be able to get through on reconsideration. Now it's the case where, and I'm not really sure if the agents are being trained differently to evaluate applications in a certain way or if the underlying computer algorithm has changed, but it's no longer a guarantee if you're under 524 and have good credit. Um, they have started denying them and then reconsideration will tell you can't overturn them. Sean, have you had experience with this?
On the personal side, not really. I will say, like, my player two, has had issues getting ink cards recently, but then she applied for the Hyatt card, instant approval, no problem. Now it had been a long, long time between personal Chase card applications, so I'm sure that helped. Um, but
Okay.
I'm not surprised to hear that either. But in my experience, I just don't have any data specifically to attest to, um, a large amount of personal card applications, at least in the past few months.
Sure. I mean, the data point that I have knowledge of is application for an ink card that got denied and then subsequently applying for a personal card. I believe it was also the Hyatt card, and that got denied as well. But I'm suspecting that the Hyatt card got denied because of the ink application and not necessarily because of other factors, because there was a long time where this person was not applying for any cards, like, before this person attempted to apply for these 2 cards. So, you also have to be careful about, like, spacing out your applications is what I'm seeing more and more. Um, and yeah, reconsideration would not budge even just for the personal card, which I was surprised by. So yeah. So let's kind of wrap this up and talk about two things to keep in mind. So one is how does this affect our strategy going forward? And second is a little discussion and speculation of what this means for Chase's business model on your credit card. So let's start with how does this affect our strategy going forward? So my take on this is that previously I'd recommend that if someone is at like 324 or 424 to really be very careful with your personal applications and try to stay at 324 or 424 as much as possible to get all those Chase business cards, um, and then slowly get the personal cards until you're above 524, and then still try not to go too crazy in case you want to get Chase cards again in the future and don't want to be locked out. Now my advice is going to change a little with what we're seeing. I still recommend that people start with Chase because of the 524 rule and because I think the Ultimate Reward system has a lower barrier to entry and the annual fees are reasonable, et cetera, et cetera. However, I would say, like, once you have all the chase cards you need and you're, like, above 524, I would be less tight with, like, trying to be very careful with my 524 status. Once I have all the cards I need, I'm above 524, I'm just gonna feel more comfortable applying for a bunch of cards from other issuers because I know that Chase now does not really favor giving more cards to someone who already has a bunch of Chase cards. So like my strategy is gonna shift a bit and be adjusted in this sense. Sean, do you agree or disagree, or do you have any other thoughts on your mind about what this means for your strategy?
No, I mean, I pretty much agree. I think it is unfortunate of the timing of this for me because I've been above 524 for a while. I already have 2 ink cards. I was hoping that by the time I get below 524, then I was going to start riding the ink train. And it now seems that the train is coming into the station and it's not going to leave again. Um, but so I'm gonna change my strategy a bit. I'm gonna try to get to at least 3 or 4 ink cards ideally. I hope that I'll have a decent chance just because it's been so long between Chase applications for me. I do think it's interesting to see how a lot of the banks, have been kind of cracking down on churning a bit more, cracking down on frequent bonuses. And I think we're kind of seeing this shift of people may want to start focusing a little bit more of the strategy, and I hate to say this, but on buying points in certain cases. In the sense that like if you're gonna try to become at a level where you're earning, significant amounts of points to be able to do these really cool vacations, it seems like it's just gonna get more and more difficult as we get, as time passes. So if I was someone that's kind of getting into this game for the first time, I would maybe start researching, what are optimal points currencies to buy, right? And I don't think it's necessarily a totally bad strategy because, you're effectively already buying these points. We've talked about this before, but you're effectively already buying these points currencies whenever you get a sign up bonus and choose not to cash it out. So it's not really fundamentally any different. I think it's just good to have this kind of. I think a lot of people get too much into like this is going to be my one strategy and I'm just going to do this strategy, right? Maybe someone's like really obsessed with a particular airline or hotel program and that's all they focus on because it's like what they like. But the problem is none of these strategies are like silver magic bullets that, will unlock the entire world of travel to you. It's almost like all of these various strategies are like tools on your tool belt. And sometimes certain tools are going to become more or less useful. And so I think that's why it's good to diversify, not necessarily just in the points currencies you earn, but in the strategies you employ, right? Where, a lot of people are super opposed to buying points, but it really isn't all that different than earning sign-up bonuses. And it's good to have that idea in mind because let's say there's a valuable points currency that becomes difficult to earn via credit cards, but is still attainable at a reasonable price by purchasing on sale or whatever, then you still, kind of have that tool in your tool belt. Would you agree a little bit with that, Sherwin?
Yes, I think those are very good points because realistically, if you want to do like the high end redemptions, you do need like a gigantic number of points, which you have to earn with bonuses, but eventually the bonuses dry up as we're seeing with Chase. So, unless you're putting a mega huge spend on your credit cards, it's very hard to get there unless you're buying points. Now, before we finish, I do want to finally discuss a little bit about what the possible motivation behind Chase's changes are and whether uh, we can use that to predict what they might do in the future. So I kind of have two theories about what's going on. So one theory is about like the economic conditions. We saw at the very beginning of COVID-19 pandemic, Chase was very strict and tough on approvals for any Chase business cards. Like it basically didn't matter. They wouldn't give it to anyone. It's extremely difficult. And then they really loosened up their approval things over the last few years following the pandemic. And now they're tightening up again. I wonder if that has to do with the economic conditions, maybe interest rates, marketing budget, etc. So that's one of my theories. Now, the other theory has to do with kind of their approach to thinking about who our customers should be. And think about what Amex has been doing, right? They have always been wanting to weed out churners, they reward high spenders, and they filter out non-profitable customers using things like pop-up jail, where uh, they might deem someone ineligible for another sign-up bonus, but still allow them to get the card. And it's very difficult to reverse engineer how to get out of pop-up queue. I wonder if we're going to see Chase to take more of this kind of approach where they're assessing not just the credit worthiness of someone, but also the profitability of having this customer in their rewards ecosystem. Thoughts, Sean?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it could be a little bit of both. I don't think it's necessarily either or. I have a feeling, I don't like this, but I do have a feeling it's closer to weeding out unprofitable customers.
Hmm.
I don't like to say that. I don't want it to be that, obviously, because that's more of like a permanent thing than we're adjusting due to economic conditions. But it does feel that way because you do wonder, especially with these ink cards, like how really are they making significant money on this? Like, yes, if there's a business that signs up and does significant spending on it, then that makes them a lot of money. But it seems like they're just kind of handing out free candy to a lot of us, and it's how long can this really last? Because these are
Yeah.
not like annual fee cards or something where they have a million credits that we value but doesn't cost them anything like Amex does,
Hmm.
right? Makes more sense on Amex's end to do that. But the people that are churning these ink cards, they're redeeming for pretty
Yeah.
high value. These are no annual fee cards. I don't really see how they're making that much on them.
I would almost prefer if they just had a clearer set of criteria that we know about. For example, I would be okay if they instituted a 24 or 48-month clock on the ink bonuses if that made those bonuses more sustainable, and then be much more predictable about approving us for these bonuses rather than like not have any restrictions at all, causing a lot of people to just apply like crazy and then now having to, you know, retreat from that easy approval situation. And now people are confused about if they can get an ink or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Okay, so let's wrap up here. What do you think of these changes? Have you had difficulty applying for a Chase card or have you had success? Let us know your experience or thoughts in the comments down below. Now, if you enjoyed today's video, found it helpful, please like it and give our channel a subscription. It really helps us out a lot. And Sean, why don't you plug our referral links in Discord?
So if you want to help support us, using our referral links in the description helps a ton, like seriously, a ton. And if you want to connect with an elite group of award travelers and credit card enthusiasts, check out the Travel Lane Discord group at the link in the description. Tons of smart people in there. You'll learn a ton, I promise you. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week.